Black teen CEO denied first-class Secret Service, and airline CEO rushed in shock. I don't care who you claim to be. First class is for paying customers, not some kid playing dress-up. Step aside. Ma'am, I understand your confusion, but my boarding pass clearly shows seat 2A. Perhaps you could check with your supervisor before this becomes more than a misunderstanding. The tension in the first-class boarding area of Chicago, O'Hare International Airport, was palpable. 17-year-old Marcus Thompson stood calmly in his tailored Navy suit, holding out his boarding pass while the gate agent, Sandra Pearson, a woman in her mid-50s with a tight blonde bun and pressed uniform, glared at him with unconcealed suspicion. A growing line of impatient business travelers shifted behind Marcus, murmuring with annoyance. "This has to be some kind of mistake," Sandra insisted, her voice rising. "There's no way you paid for first class." She turned to her colleague. "Call security." Marcus took a deep breath, his composed exterior masking the familiar sting of these encounters. "Before you do that, you might want to check the passenger manifest again. My company purchased this ticket weeks ago." "What company would that be?" Sandra's tone was dripping with sarcasm. "Your lemonade stand." A distinguished older gentleman in the line behind Marcus stepped forward. "Excuse me, but do you know who this young man is?" Sandra barely glanced at him. "Sir, please stay in line. This situation doesn't concern you." "Actually, it does," the man said, pulling out his credentials. "I'm Robert Langston, Director of Operations for United Airlines, and unless I'm mistaken, this is Marcus Thompson, CEO of NextGen Solutions." The color drained from Sandra's face as she looked from Robert to Marcus, then back again. In the distance, two men in dark suits and earpieces had appeared, scanning the growing commotion with professional concern. "Is there a problem here, Mr. Thompson?" one of them called out. The crowd's whispers intensified. Phones were raised, recording the scene. Marcus stood perfectly still, the weight of every eye in the terminal upon him, his future and everything he'd worked for hanging in this very public moment of humiliation or vindication. But let's go back to how this all started. It was just 3 hours earlier when Marcus Thompson woke up in his hotel room, unaware that this ordinary business trip would turn into a test of everything he stood for. Marcus opened his eyes to the gentle chime of his alarm. The Chicago skyline greeted him through the hotel window, the early morning sun glinting off Lake Michigan. At 17, most of his peers were worried about college applications and prom dates. Marcus, however, was preparing for his meeting with United Airlines' executive team about implementing his company's revolutionary software across their global operations. He moved through his morning routine with practiced efficiency. 6 years ago, no one would have imagined that the quiet boy from the south side of Chicago would become the youngest CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech company. But grief and determination had a way of accelerating life plans. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," said the hotel concierge as Marcus stepped into the lobby. "Your car is waiting outside." "Thank you, Richard," Marcus replied, adjusting his tie. He'd stayed at this hotel enough times that the staff knew him by name, though new faces still tended to mistake him for someone's son rather than a CEO in his own right. The sleek black car pulled away from the curb, carrying Marcus toward the United Airlines corporate headquarters. In the backseat, he reviewed his presentation one last time. NextGen Solutions had developed an artificial intelligence system that could predict maintenance issues before they happened, potentially saving airlines millions in unexpected repairs and delays. "Nervous about today, sir?" asked Harold, his driver and the man who'd been with Marcus since the beginning. Marcus smiled at the gray-haired man who'd become something of a surrogate father figure. "A little. It's a big contract." "They'd be fools not to sign with you," Harold said, his eyes crinkling in the rearview mirror. "Your father would be proud." The mention of his father brought the familiar ache to Marcus's chest. Thomas Thompson had been a brilliant programmer who died of a heart attack when Marcus was 11, leaving behind a half-finished AI project and a son who promised to complete it. By 14, Marcus had not only finished his father's work but expanded it beyond what anyone thought possible, turning it into the foundation of NextGen Solutions. "I hope so, Harold," Marcus said quietly. "I really do." The car pulled up to the gleaming corporate tower and Harold gave Marcus an encouraging nod. "Knock 'em dead, kid. How did the big presentation go?" Gloria Thompson's voice was warm and strong despite her 75 years. "We got the contract," he told her. United Airlines and the Department of Homeland Security both in one day. "Your mama and daddy are shouting with joy in heaven," Gloria said, her voice thick with emotion. I always knew you'd do great things, but even I couldn't have imagined all this when you were just a skinny little boy playing with your father's old computers. Marcus smiled at the memory. There was an incident at the airport, he admitted, knowing his grandmother would want the full story. The gate agent didn't believe I belonged in first class. Gloria made a sound that was half sigh, half grunt of familiar frustration. Some things never change, do they? How'd you handle it, baby? The way Mom taught me, with dignity. That's my boy, Gloria said proudly. Your mother always said they can only take your dignity if you give it away. Sounds like you kept yours. I did, and something good might come of it. The airline CEO wants NextGen to help develop a training program about unconscious bias. Now that's turning lemons into lemonade, Gloria laughed. Your mother would be so proud. Both your parents would. After saying goodnight to his grandmother, Marcus stood by the hotel window, looking out at the New York skyline. 6 years ago, he was a child with a dream of finishing his father's work. Now, at 17, he was the CEO of a company on the verge of major government and corporate contracts, flying first class and being escorted by Secret Service agents. Yet the incident at the gate was a stark reminder that no matter how successful he became, some people would always see him first as young and black, making assumptions before knowing anything about him. His parents had prepared him for this reality, teaching him to respond not with anger but with unwavering dignity and excellence. Your dignity is your power, his mother had always said. Today, that lesson had proven its worth once again. The following morning, Marcus met Michael Chen for breakfast in the hotel restaurant. By the time they finished their meal, they had outlined a comprehensive bias training program that would become part of United's standard employee education. This goes beyond just avoiding embarrassing incidents, Michael said as they reviewed their notes. It's about creating a truly inclusive environment for both employees and customers. Exactly, Marcus agreed. The goal isn't to shame people for unconscious biases, we all have them. It's to help people recognize and correct for them. Michael nodded thoughtfully. You know, when I was starting out in the airline industry in the 1980s, I faced plenty of assumptions and barriers as an Asian American executive. Things have improved since then, but clearly not enough. Progress isn't linear, Marcus observed, and sometimes it takes an uncomfortable moment like yesterday's to push it forward. As they finished breakfast, Michael's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He checked it and frowned slightly. Something wrong? Marcus asked. It's about Sandra Pearson, the gate agent from yesterday, Michael explained. HR has reviewed her employment record and found 2 previous complaints about similar behavior assumptions made about passengers based on appearance. Both were resolved with warnings. I see, Marcus said neutrally, though he felt a twinge of concern for the woman despite everything. Given the pattern and the public nature of yesterday's incident, termination would be justified, Michael continued, watching Marcus closely. But before making that decision, I wanted your input. Marcus was surprised. You're asking me whether you should fire her. I value your perspective. You were the one directly affected by her actions. Marcus thought carefully before responding. Firing her might send a message about consequences, but it won't solve the underlying problems. And it might actually reinforce resentment rather than understanding. What would you suggest instead? If she's willing to acknowledge the problem and genuinely wants to do better, maybe she could be part of the solution, Marcus said slowly, an idea forming. What if, instead of terminating her, she became one of the first participants in the new training program, and afterward perhaps she could even help facilitate it, sharing her own journey of recognition and growth? Michael's eyebrows rose. That's not what I expected you to suggest. It's remarkably generous. It's not about generosity, Marcus clarified. It's about effectiveness, which accomplishes more, removing one person who displayed bias or transforming her into an advocate for change who can influence dozens or hundreds of others. A slow smile spread across Michael's face. You know, Marcus, for someone so young, you have a remarkable understanding of human nature and organizational change. He extended his hand. I think United Airlines is going to benefit from this partnership in ways I hadn't anticipated. 3 months later, Marcus returned to O'Hare International Airport for a follow-up meeting with United's executive team. As he approached the first-class check-in counter, he was surprised to see a familiar face, Sandra Pearson. She recognized him immediately, a flash of remembrance and discomfort crossing her features before she squared her shoulders and met his gaze directly. Good morning, Mr. Thompson, she said with genuine professionalism. Welcome back to United Airlines. Good morning, Ms. Pearson, he replied politely. How are you? I'm well, thank you. She hesitated, then continued with quiet sincerity. Mr. Thompson, I owe you an apology for my behavior during our last encounter. It was unprofessional and unfair. I made assumptions that were not only wrong but hurtful. Marcus nodded, appreciating her directness. Thank you for saying that, Ms. Pearson. I've spent the last 3 months in United's new bias awareness program, she continued. It's been eye-opening. I've learned a lot about myself and the unconscious assumptions I've been making throughout my career. I'm glad to hear that, Marcus said genuinely. Actually, Sandra said, her expression brightening slightly, I've been asked to help facilitate the training for other gate agents, sharing my experience. If you have a moment, I'd appreciate any advice you might have for making the sessions more impactful. Marcus was genuinely surprised and impressed. I'd be happy to, perhaps after my meeting this afternoon. That would be wonderful, thank you. She processed his check-in efficiently. You're all set, Mr. Thompson. The first-class lounge is open, and your flight to Boston is on time for departure at 4:30. As Marcus walked away, he reflected on the remarkable transformation. What could have ended as just another humiliating incident had instead sparked meaningful change, not just for him, but potentially for countless other passengers who would never know the story behind United's new training program. In the first-class lounge, he found Robert Langston waiting for him. Marcus, good to see you again. They shook hands warmly. You'll be pleased to know that the implementation of NextGen's system is proceeding ahead of schedule. Maintenance issues are down 27% already. That's excellent news, Marcus replied. But that's not all, Robert continued with enthusiasm. The bias training program you helped develop has been so successful that 3 other major airlines have inquired about implementing similar initiatives. Michael wants to discuss expanding it across the entire transportation sector. Marcus smiled, thinking of his parents and the legacy they had begun, a technology company that was now not only advancing aviation safety, but also helping to create more equitable treatment for all passengers. You know, Robert said thoughtfully as they sat down, when I invited you to fly with me that day, I had no idea it would lead to all this. I was just impressed by your technology and wanted to discuss implementation details. Life has a way of taking unexpected turns, Marcus agreed. Indeed it does, and speaking of unexpected turns, there's someone else who'd like to speak with you today. Robert gestured toward the lounge entrance where Director Ramirez was being escorted in by airport staff. Director, Marcus greeted him, standing to shake his hand. I wasn't expecting to see you here. I was in Chicago for a security briefing and heard you were passing through, the director explained. I wanted to personally inform you that NextGen's security protocol has been fully implemented across 3 key government systems, with excellent results. The president has been briefed on its effectiveness, and there's interest in expanding its use. Marcus felt a surge of pride, knowing his father's original concept had evolved into something that was now protecting critical national infrastructure. That's gratifying to hear, Director. Thank you for letting me know. There's something else, Director Ramirez continued. The President is establishing a new advisory council on cybersecurity innovation, bringing together leaders from the private and public sectors. He'd like you to serve as a founding member. Marcus was momentarily speechless. I'm honored, sir. The formal invitation will come next week, but I wanted to give you advance notice. The director's usually stern expression softened slightly. Your parents would be very proud, Mr. Thompson, not just of your technical achievements, but of how you've handled yourself in difficult situations. Marcus looked at him questioningly. Yes, I heard about the incident here 3 months ago, the director confirmed, and how you turned it into an opportunity for positive change rather than simply seeking punishment. That kind of leadership, seeing beyond the immediate reaction to the larger potential for improvement, that's what caught the president's attention. As Director Ramirez departed for his own flight, Marcus sat back down beside Robert, processing everything that had happened since that day 3 months ago. It's remarkable, Robert mused. One unfortunate incident at an airport gate has led to industry-wide training initiatives and now possibly national policy influence. My mother always told me that how we respond to ignorance matters more than the ignorance itself, Marcus said. She said we could either let it diminish us or use it as fuel to create something better. Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman. She was, Marcus agreed, feeling her presence as strongly as if she were sitting beside him. They both were my parents. Everything I've built has been an extension of their vision and values. As they boarded the flight to Boston, where NextGen would be opening a new office, Marcus thought about the journey that had brought him here, from the grief-stricken boy determined to finish his father's work to the CEO whose company was now influencing both corporate policy and national security. The flight attendant at the cabin door smiled warmly. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Thompson. It's an honor to have you flying with us today." And this time, there was no doubt in her eyes, no questioning of whether he belonged. Just genuine respect for a young man whose response to adversity had helped create a better experience for everyone who would follow. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the newly renovated headquarters of NextGen Solutions in Chicago, surrounded by his team as they prepared to unveil their latest innovation, an AI-driven security system that combined his father's original predictive maintenance technology with enhanced protocols developed through their government partnership. Gloria Thompson, elegant in a royal blue dress, stood proudly at her grandson's side as he addressed the gathered employees, business partners, and media. NextGen was founded on a simple principle, Marcus said. That technology should serve humanity by creating not just efficiency but greater equity and opportunity for all. What began as my father's vision for safer aircraft maintenance has expanded into tools that secure our nation's digital infrastructure and training programs that help people recognize and overcome unconscious bias. In the audience, Marcus spotted familiar faces: Robert Langston and Michael Chen from United Airlines, Director Ramirez from Homeland Security, and somewhat surprisingly, Sandra Pearson, who had become one of the most effective advocates for United's bias training program, her personal story of transformation resonating powerfully with employees across the company. Today, we announce NextGen's most ambitious initiative yet, the Thompson Scholarship for Innovation and Equity, which will provide full college funding and mentorship for 100 underserved youth each year who demonstrate promise in technology and a commitment to creating more inclusive systems. The announcement was met with enthusiastic applause. Gloria squeezed Marcus's hand, tears shining in her eyes. "This scholarship," Marcus continued, "named in honor of my parents, Thomas and Elaine Thompson, represents their belief that talent exists everywhere, but opportunity does not. By expanding access to education and mentorship, we hope to nurture the next generation of innovators who will build technology that serves all of humanity, not just those who have traditionally had access to it." After the presentation, as guests mingled during the reception, Sandra Pearson approached Marcus somewhat hesitantly. "Mr. Thompson, I just wanted to say thank you again for the opportunity you gave me. When I think about how differently things could have gone that day at O'Hare." "How are the training sessions going?" Marcus asked. Her face brightened. "Remarkably well. We've trained over 2,000 United employees so far, and the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. Many say it's the most meaningful professional development they've ever received." "That's wonderful to hear. And it's not just United anymore," she continued enthusiastically. "I've been invited to help implement similar programs at Delta and American Airlines. What happened that day, my mistake and your response to it, is creating change throughout the entire industry." As Sandra moved on to speak with Michael Chen, Marcus's grandmother appeared at his side. "That's the woman who gave you trouble at the airport?" Gloria asked, watching Sandra thoughtfully. "Yes," Marcus confirmed. "She's become one of the strongest advocates for the training program." Gloria nodded approvingly. "Your mama was right about keeping your dignity, but she'd be extra proud of how you turned that moment into something bigger than yourself." She patted his hand. "That's the true Thompson legacy, not just the technology or the business success, but how you've used it to open doors for others." Later that evening, after the guests had departed, Marcus stood alone in his office, looking at the photographs on his wall, his father in his MIT lab coat, his mother at the opening of the first community technology center funded by their foundation, and a family portrait taken just months before his father's unexpected death, all three of them smiling, unaware of how soon their lives would change. "We did it, Dad," Marcus said softly to the empty room. "Your technology is saving lives, just like you hoped. And Mom, your foundation is creating opportunities for kids who remind me of myself." He touched the framed photo gently, remembering his father's patient explanations of coding principles, his mother's insistence on dignity in the face of prejudice, and the love that had sustained him through the loss of both. What had begun as a difficult moment at an airport gate had catalyzed changes that were now rippling across multiple industries. The next-gen technology was making air travel safer. The bias training program was making it more equitable, and the new scholarship would ensure that more young people from underserved communities would have the chance to create their own technological innovations. It wasn't the path Marcus had expected when he'd stepped up to that gate at O'Hare 6 months ago, But as his mother had always told him, sometimes the most important journeys begin with someone trying to block your way forward. By maintaining his dignity in that moment and choosing compassion over retribution afterward, Marcus had not only honored his parents' legacy, but expanded it in ways none of them could have imagined. As he prepared to leave the office, his phone buzzed with a message from Director Ramirez. The president has signed off on nationwide implementation of NextGen security protocols for all critical infrastructure. Congratulations, Mr. Thompson. Your father's vision is now protecting our entire nation. Marcus smiled, thinking of the skinny 11-year-old boy who had promised his dying father that he would finish what Thomas Thompson had started. That promise had led him here, not just to business success or technological innovation, but to a position where he could open doors for others who, like him, had the talent but not always the opportunity. That's the real legacy, he whispered to the photographs of his parents. Not just what we build, but who we help build it with us. Thank you for listening. If this story touched you, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments.